Welcome to everyone who is on our first Raising Eagles session of the school year. We're so excited to have you. All of Raising Eagles are put on by Community Services, which is our little department here in Allen. And our motto this year is connect, engage, and grow. And so we're very hopeful that through the opportunities that we provide, you are able to connect with us, with other families, with administrators and teachers within the school district, so that we can engage in supporting our students. And in that, we're all going to grow together. And so we're very excited about this school year. I'm Ashley Croston. I'm Director of Community Services. On this call, we also have Chrissy Alexander. She's our Family and Community Engagement Liaison. We have our presenter today, Dr. Ryan Smith, who's fantastic. And I know many of you have heard him before. And then also Becky Wigington, she's our Director of Counseling, helps to support us in the what are we going to share with families realm for school year planning. I want to share a couple of opportunities that exist. Mindful Parenting Practices is going to take place on August 28th at noon. This is designed more for middle school and up families. So if you've got a 7th grader or a 9th grader and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm hitting a wall, I don't know how to work with my teen, please join us. It's going to be a great session on how to have some emotional regulation, active listening, and self-compassion with our kids, and just really be able to support them in the ways that they need us to. Parenting looks very different these days than it did in the past, and so hopefully we can come together to support each other in that venture. Also, mark your calendars for a community engagement night. This is an in-person learning night for families to actually come together in person at the STEAM Center. We'll have, it's like a conference style event. So we'll have dinner, childcare, and then after that, there will be a variety of opportunities for you to attend different sessions that are applicable to your age group of children. So if you've got a pre-K kiddo or a kindergartner or a middle or high schooler, there will be different sessions offered for you for you to take advantage of. And again, that's Tuesday, September 30th from 5:30 to 8 p.m. at the STEAM Center. I also want to share that this year is the first year where we are introducing lift-off tasks. And so the purpose of this is I was thinking about this as a parent. Okay, so I'm going to watch something and I'm going to think it's great. And then I'm going to go off into my week and it's going to be really hard for me to maybe apply things. And so I talked with some surrounding districts and try to get some ideas for how to better support our community, and kind of came up with this one. And so lift-off tasks will be an opportunity for you to, after you've attended this event, to go and put it into practice. And so I'm going to click here so I can show you, because I want you to be able to take advantage of it if you're interested. This takes you to the Raising Eagles website. So if you just type in Raising Eagles, Allen ISD, you'll come to this website and you'll be able to see all sorts of things, our sessions, upcoming sessions, our calendar of events. And then you can see right here where it says Parent Caregiver Lift-Off Tasks. Are y'all able to see my screen still?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. You can see Digital Dilemma is what you're viewing today. If you would like to do the Parent Caregiver Lift-Off tasks afterwards, this is where you would go to do that. When you complete these, if you complete up to 4 or more for the school year, you'll be invited to a little celebration at the end of the year where we'll celebrate you and your families. We're going to come together, have some photo opportunities, some certificates. We'll have some ice cream, games, all sorts of fun things for you guys to engage in as a family. So this has taken us now to, this is called Easy Generator. Now I'm logged in, so this is what I can see because I'm logged in, but you would just create a username and password. It's super simple. And then the questions come up. And so we will add in the video from today once we have it. Obviously, we don't have it yet because it hasn't happened, but we'll add that in. And then there are some questions. So what is one thing your family is doing well when it comes to managing technology use at home? And then you would just share that. And then for your activity, you're going to choose one evening to do a tech swap. So trade 1 hour where you may be on technology for a family activity. So a board game, a walk, cooking together, maybe an art project, and then just write a short reflection about the experience. Super simple, 2 questions, but it kind of forces you to put what you've learned into action. And so complete 4 or more of those. And like I said, you'll receive that invitation at the end of the school year. So that's that. Hopefully you will take advantage of that. And then without further ado, I'm going to kick it off to Dr. Ryan Smith.
Hey, you need a new picture.
About Digital Dilemma.
You need a new picture. That's like way over a decade old. I guess that technically is my fault, huh?
Hey, it's a good one. My picture needs to be updated as
I was
well.
so young and so innocent and so naive when that picture was
No,
taken. So,
no.
parents, I'm grateful that you're here. Let me see. We've got, wow, are you kidding me? There's 58 of you on this call. I listen, I say this all the time to you, but I don't say it all the time to everybody else. I am genuinely always shocked by the turnout of the Allen ISD parents. I think that is a testament to you. That is a testament to the efforts that your district puts together to ensure that you all are getting these opportunities. But parents, by simply being here, you are on your way to reining in technology in your home. I'm going to share my screen real quick, so let me pause for 1 second. Before I get too deep into it, there are some things that I need you to hear um, that I hope will be helpful. Hang on just a second. I'm going to hit that play button. Oh, there we go. There we go. All right. So, a couple of things I want to tell you before we dive into the content. The main one is I am aware with this group that I do have some kind of frequent flyers. I actually have begun to recognize some of your names and your faces at these presentations. And so that is great, but you also kind of messed me up, and I'm going to tell you why. It would be so much easier if I could go into every district and recycle the same material over and over again. But unfortunately, you people keep showing up and like wanting content. So if you are like one of those returning customers to these presentations of mine, I did keep you in mind today. So there are going to be some things that will look like review. So on the front end, if you think I've recognized some of those slides, you do. But I've got a bunch of stuff today that we're going to go into that largely is the result of your feedback form that went out before we did this presentation. So if you ever get those, please respond. They are incredibly helpful for me to ensure that you're getting what you want. Secondly, I'm going to go ahead and do this. Now, I realize the irony. Most of you are probably either watching or listening on a phone, which means you can't take a QR code of the screen on your own phone when you're doing it. Maybe you have a second device handy. If not, I'm going to pause for 1 second. The QR code in front of you has a link to the slides for today. I'm going to beg you, nobody's going to be taking notes, but I'm going to beg you to pay less attention to what's happening on the screen and pay more attention to what I'm telling you. All the information you need will be on the screen. But if you want to go through and like read through it, you can. What I'm not going to do is spend the next 45 minutes reading my slides to you. Okay, so I want you to see what's there, and you'll kind of have the platform for what it is that I'm telling you. But parents, I know you don't want to be read to, so I'm going to try to tell you stories. I'm going to try to tell you a little bit about the world that I live in, because I think it's going to help you understand the world that you live in. But the slides in front of you, or the QR code in front of you, will help. Now, while you're pulling up the slides, I'm going to pause for a second. I asked the district folks when we first got on this call how the change was coming with the new law. I hope in your home it has been peaceful. I'm not going to open that up for conversation just yet, but I am curious how it's going. The one thing I'll tell you is, when I tell you that we're in this together, I genuinely mean it. I have an eighth grader. He's 13 years old. I have a fourth grader, but my eighth grader, like a week ago, he's under the same laws that you're under, so he doesn't have a phone at school either. He had football practice, and for whatever reason, this day his practice ended like kind of substantially early. It was probably 20 minutes early. Well, rather than him keep up with his phone and the Yonder pouch, which is what his school is using, he's just not taking it. So he didn't have his phone with him. And there's a handful of his buddies who also don't have their phones either. So here's what's interesting. And granted, when your dad does what his dad does for a living, you end up being a case study. So I'm supposed to pick him up at like 4:30, and they got done with practice at like 10 after. So it's way early. I show up, and the weirdest thing happened. A year ago, had he finished at 4:30, 4:10, he would have texted me. My office is 5 minutes from his school. I would have gone and picked him up. He would have been home by I would have had him by 4:15, but he couldn't text me. So I show up at like 4:35 or so, and he's been sitting in front of the little practice field area with like 10 of his friends who also didn't have their phones, and they had been talking and they had been being middle school boys, and I almost didn't want to pick him up because it was like this really fantastic time where kids were doing what a bunch of us on this call always bemoan how great it was when we were kids and we got to just play with our friends. Well, by virtue of not having a phone in his pocket, my son was thrust into a situation where he had to sit and wait. He also, for the record, went into the school or tried to get into the school. He tried to open a couple of doors and they were locked. So he had to problem solve too. So I was super excited that that happened. I hope all of your experiences are as good as mine have been so far. We're going to get to some of that though. All right. I'm not going to walk through this, but if you are curious as to whether or not I have the credentials to talk about what we're talking about, you are welcome to read this slide and find out for yourself. The most important part of it is my doctoral dissertation years ago, and this was back when tech was really becoming ubiquitous, was on the impact of digital media on analog relationships. So I do promise you, what you're going to hear from me is more than just my personal experiences. It is pretty deeply involved in research and study, and we do keep up to date on all of those things. With that in mind, here are 3 really good books if you want to follow up on this. The Anxious Generation is actually, if you want to blame one thing for why the laws across a bunch of states started changing, it was that book. If you have not read The Anxious Generation and you are a parent, I would beg you to read it starting tomorrow. It will absolutely change your perspective on parenting. The other ones, Stolen Focus was good. It's a little bit older, but Digital Minimalism is, if you are like me and very kind of type A, what's my process? Digital Minimalism will actually walk you through a step-by-step how to deconstruct your tech use and then rebuild it in the way that you want. All right, so I'm going to start our conversation this morning with a rhetorical question. And it's rhetorical because you're online and I don't know how easy it would be to hear from multiple people. I want you to pause. You're probably multitasking. You're probably eating your lunch, or you're in your car, or you're at your house, or you're in your office. Do me a favor, for just a second, just pause. And I want you to think about what life was like when you were a kid. And I want you to specifically think about what you enjoyed most. Now, I am not one of those, the world was better when I was a kid people. In fact, I thought about this a lot this morning, knowing we were going to have this conversation today. There are a lot of ways in which I'm very grateful that my kids didn't have to grow up when I did. A lot of advantages to being a kid right now. I know that we have a tendency to kind of belittle the experience of kids now because we don't really understand it. But in a lot of ways, it's a really good time to be a teenager. But the one question I want you to consider is, what did you enjoy doing most when you were a kid? What were your fondest memories? Okay. If you really marinate on that question, you know what I'm going to bet your answer is? I'm going to bet your answer has something to do with other people. Or you're one of those introverted personalities, which is awesome. And maybe your fond memories weren't about other people. Maybe they were about creating things. You painted, you wrote things, you read things, you created things outside, you built things. I would bet for most of us, because we didn't grow up with the kind of ubiquitous technology that exists now, when you think of what you enjoyed most as a kid, it falls into one of those 2 categories. Okay, the 2 categories are, number 1, other people, and number 2, creative, introspective type stuff. Okay, the reason that I am so concerned about the technology use in kids today is because the technology that kids are engaging with now are eliminating those 2 things. They're eliminating face-to-face time with other kids, like I talked about with my son in football. They're also eliminating the ability for your kids to come home and create a piece of music on a piano that they like, or to draw a picture, or to build with Legos, or to do the things that in previous generations that legitimately helped kids build a sense of themselves. And it allowed kids to get smarter. I don't know if I can say this more clearly, but creative time makes smarter children. Face-to-face time creates smarter children. The graph in front of you is really simple. The graph in front of you shows you that from 1975 through 2010, face-to-face time with kids held pretty close. It had dropped a little bit in the early 2000s, but it was pretty close. right around 2010, face-to-face time where kids were in the real world playing with their friends fell off a cliff. 2010 was when smartphones and social media had this kind of demon baby, and created this experience robber, which is the thing that really bothers me about where we're at. The next slide I wanted you to see, because I needed you to hear the ramifications for it. Depending on the study you're looking at, the estimate fluctuates, but we believe that the average 18-year-old kid in 2024, now this was the data really stops at 2024. I imagine the farther we go, it'll get worse. But this child has had somewhere in their life between 20 and 30,000 fewer interactions with human beings than you all had. One of the things that I like to remind parents is that for all of human society up until about 2015, if you wanted to experiment and spend a month not talking to human beings, you couldn't survive. Even if you wanted to order food, you were going to have to talk to somebody on the phone to order that food. The ability now for us to be able to order everything digitally, it gets dropped off by a person with no expectation that you're going to have any sort of face-to-face interaction with that person. In fact, I would bet 95% of you on this call are guilty of doing what I did yesterday, which is waiting at the door while the person drops the stuff off for them to turn around and walk off. And then before they've even gotten to their car, you're grabbing the stuff and coming in and not recognizing how weirdly inhuman that is. It was my 9-year-old that was like, "Shouldn't we say hi?" And yes, you should have told me that 30 seconds ago. I was just trying to avoid an awkward interaction. All right. So here are the effects of that digital life. The effects, before I get to the slide, 20 to 30,000 fewer interactions. Parents, that is 20 to 30,000 fewer times that your kid has had a chance to find his voice. 20 to 30,000 fewer times that your child has had a chance to like interact with people in a way that they kind of mess up and fumble and have to recover from. It's 20 to 30,000 fewer moments for your kid to develop an emotional depth and complexity that only comes from human interaction and human dialogue. One of the reasons why our kids are really struggling with resilience and why they're really struggling with not getting what they want from their parents and from their peers and from their teachers, and struggle to manage discomfort is because we don't ever ask them to manage discomfort. They live their lives digitally where everything is accessible all the time. All right, so I'm going to roll through these next couple slides quickly. I'm going to pause. I'm going to fly through these next 5 or 10 slides. And the reason for that is because I don't want this presentation to just be doom and gloom. Okay. I'm trying to set a stage for where we're going to go. I want most of our time together to be proactive. What can we do stuff? So with your permission, and since it's digital and you're all muted, you can't say no. What we're going to do is I'm going to move really quickly through these slides. And if you want more information on them, screenshot them and go back and look at them. But for the next few minutes, just listen to my voice more than looking at the screen. We have a mental health crisis that began in 2010 with an explosion of anxiety and depressive symptoms. Social media is by design creating high anxiety and addictive behavior. We're losing resilience. Our children are becoming more emotionally fragile than any children who've come before them. They cannot handle the slightest bit of challenge and the slightest bit of discomfort. Now, that's a holistic problem that we're going to talk about here in a minute. But it's real. I also need you to know that we know, based on evidence, we know that there are gender differences in how the digital world interacts with our kids. By and large, our girls tend to suffer more from social media. Boys tend to suffer more from video gaming and pornography. Now, pornography is becoming more of an issue with the female population than it's ever been before, but those things do tend to track. All of this is because of what we said a minute ago. Your kids are simply not spending enough time with other kids. And here's the other problem. Some of you are gonna be a step ahead of me. Some of the reason that your kids don't spend time with other kids is because those kids also don't spend time with other kids and they're difficult to be around. I get it. We maybe have to be a little more vigilant about our kids' social lives than we had to be in previous generations, but we can't just outsource raising our kids to the internet. All right, so The reality I wanted to paint, the picture I wanted to paint, was that we've traded the analog experiences that created a holistic life. We've traded those for digital life. All right. The effects of that start really, really young. I use this slide in almost every presentation that I do, primarily because I'm always talking to parents, and parents always believe that this problem doesn't exist until the kid is old enough to have a phone. Okay, so I've been using this same slide for a really long time. What we know about digital stimulation is that when kids pre-kindergarten, so preschool age kids, when they engage with an hour per day of digital stimulation, we see that correlated to a 10% increase in the likelihood of later attention problems. So somebody who does what I do for a living is 10% more likely to diagnose your kid with an attention disorder for every hour that your kid spends engaged in digital stimulation. If you want to deep dive on this, this was rooted in the work of a guy named Dimitri Christakis. He's a neurosurgeon in Seattle. He's done a bunch of studies on this. What we also know is that for cognitive stimulation, which is what we've been describing, it's playing, it's swinging, it's building sticks, forts out in the yard, it's playing Legos, it's doing puzzles, it's all cognitive stimulation. For cognitive stimulation, for every hour per day that your kids spend engaged with those activities, it's correlated to a 30% decrease in that same likelihood. So here's the reason I put all these things together. I put them together because I want you to know that our goal is to try to create balanced kids. I don't want you to throw your technology away. You may not have caught what I said a minute ago. I told you a story about my 8th grade kid not having his phone. Folks, my 8th grade kid has a phone. Now, I'm going to talk about how we did that, but I'm not encouraging you to get rid of all the technology in your home. If you can live like that, fine. I would doubt that that's going to be in the best interest of a kid who is growing up in a digital world. The goal is balance. We've got to be able to balance our kids' lives. The reason that this is such a problem, the digital world is conditioning kids to believe that the real world functions differently than the real world functions. Okay, your kid's phone, your kid's iPad, your kid's streaming services convince your kid that everything is on demand, everything, and it's all up to me. If I don't like the movie I'm watching, I'll go to a different one. If I don't like the game, I'll download a new one. If I don't like the music, I'll download another one. The problem is they then walk into a kindergarten classroom and the teacher puts an activity in front of them and they can't swipe off of it. And because they can't swipe off of it and they can't swipe off of her, they then develop this fairly aggressive sense of entitlement that looks to us as adults like an attention problem. When in reality, the kid is behaving normally. It's the world that changed. The kid is doing what they've always done for 5 years. If I don't like something, I don't have to do it. And now I'm in kindergarten and I have to do it. Folks, that is a problem. And the biggest issue I have is that we have a tendency to blame the teachers when that happens, to blame the school districts. I don't blame a teacher for not behaving the way an iPad behaves. And that's where a lot of our conflict is coming in with elementary age kids. All right, so I'm not going to belabor this point, but here's what I wanted you to see. I'm going to skip to this one. There's a difference between the lessons learned in the analog world and the lessons learned in the digital world. If you grew up like me, going to CD stores, and if you grew up buying tickets to movies, if you have ever gone to a mall before it opened because Ticketmaster was going to sell tickets to a concert you wanted to go to. Now, I realize I used to make that comment like 10 years ago and everybody understood it. Now I'm a little older than I used to be. So maybe not as many people can relate to that experience, but if you grew up doing those things, you were given these really organic lessons that the world didn't revolve around you, that you were going to have to bend to what you wanted. You were going to have to work for things. The digital world teaches your kid the complete opposite lesson. Okay. So you get all of these really organic, really awesome lessons about having to work and having to change and having to evolve. And then you give a kid a digital world, and again, none of that's relevant anymore. Now I get to do what I want, when I want, how I want. Okay. Before we get into the do what section, parents, I need you to hear me. If you are hoping that in the next 30 minutes, I am going to give you the magic trick that will make your kid lovingly, willfully, and voluntarily put down their device and you don't have to, I don't have it. That doesn't exist. If you want to make this change, if you want to grow as a family, you're going to have to do it as a family. If you expect healthy behavior from a child in an unhealthy environment, you're asking your child to be superhuman. Okay, this is an AI generated image, and it is one of my favorite images I've ever done. And I did it for this presentation a few years ago, actually. You can't ask your kid to eat vegetables if you are eating nothing but donuts. If your kid goes to the pantry and sees junk food, guess what, folks? Your kid's going to eat junk food. So the goal for us as parents has to be, let's get a handle on our tech usage first. Let's understand what technology means to us as adults, and then let's help our kids with it. Okay, there's a reason that on airplanes, adults are told to put their oxygen masks on first. And the reason is you need to have your wits about you. And folks, if you try today, if you try to curtail your kids' tech use while scrolling through Facebook, they're going to accuse you of being a hypocrite, and they're going to be right. Okay, so my message to you is, if we're going to make this change, we're going to have to do it as parents. We're going to have to do it as those responsible for raising children to be healthy citizens. All right, so here's my big message to parents. I used to open this presentation with a bunch of neuroscience. So we would talk about like dopamine. There's some really interesting neuroscience about that. Maybe one of these years we'll do a special presentation just on the neuroscience, because maybe some of you who are like super into TED Talks like I am, maybe that'll help you make this change. But for now, you're going to have to trust me. In a very biologically real way, our phones make us less happy with anything that isn't our phone. Okay, we can't create a tech obsessed culture in the home and then get mad at our kids for their tech obsession. We also can't be angry at what we're allowing and what we're going to model. All right. So now the part I wanted to spend, that's the fastest I've ever done. The setup part. I want to pause for a second. If you have been in presentations with me before, now is the part where you think, wow, he's really cleaned up that front end. All right. So now we're going to spend most of our time doing the thing that I'm hoping you got on this call to get, which is the actual tools. Okay. I need to dive into one little bit of empowerment before we do. I'm going to address a lot of things in the next few minutes. I'm going to tell you what I can't address. I want to speak specifically to some of the responses that I read on the initial form. They were really important. They were really powerful. But I need you to know that there were a lot of concerns on that questionnaire that weren't tech problems. Okay, so I saw a number of responses that were like, how do I get my kid to stop fighting me on this? How do I get my kid to, with a good attitude, put their phone down, and to not be angry with me when I try to take it? If you're routinely fighting with your child about anything, it's probably not a tech problem. It's probably a relationship problem with you and your kid. Okay, it does me no good to lie to you, folks. It would be really nice for me to say, okay, here's the little trick that you can use. If you and your kid are yelling and screaming at each other, that's not a tech problem, folks. That's a relational dynamics problem. So we're not in person. Okay, I can't see you. I can't see the look on your face. I don't know which parent just got kind of triggered and emotional. I don't know which parent is mad at me now for what I just said. But if it's you, then I need you to hear me, because I'm probably talking to you. If it's you, you are the parent. You absolutely can take control of the technology in your home, but it's possible there needs to be some relationship repair work on the front end. If you think to yourself, I can't implement any of these changes because my child will yell at me and that means we'll have to stop, I'm going to encourage you to check the catalog of offerings that Ashley mentioned a little while ago. Allen is doing some really good presentations on relationship building and mindfulness practices. That's where you need to be. Those conversations are going to allow you to walk into this tech conversation in a completely different way. But if your problem is my kid yells at me, I need you to remember that you are the parent. Now, the second thing I'm going to ask from you is when you are working with your children, I need you to remember that you are a thermostat. You are not a thermometer. Okay, so here's what that means for those parents who have not heard that analogy yet. A thermostat maintains a homeostasis. It maintains the temperature. A thermostat has a certain high that it won't go above and a certain low that it won't go below. Parents, I need you to have a certain volume that you refuse to go above and a certain level of disconnection and despondency that you won't go below. I need you to decide I'm not going to yell in a certain way at my kids no matter what. You've got to be a thermostat that is controlling the temperature in the room. A thermometer responds to the room. If it's hot, the thermometer goes up. If it's cold, the thermometer goes down. The thermometer if whatever you're giving me is what I give back to you, your child cannot make you mad. You can allow your child to create that condition in you, but you are allowing the child to create that condition in you. All right. Now, if you feel like I'm being too direct, if you feel like I'm stepping on your toes too much, I want you to know the reason. The reason is because I genuinely care about this conversation. I want you to be able to grow with your kids. I want your kids to not fight you every time you try to parent them. There is a fundamental truth about us as parents. Our kids just refuse to let us be the amazing parents that we really want to be. I get that. I get that. But what I need from you as parents is I need you to recognize that as the parent, it is up to you to recognize where the lines are. So I'll say it again really bluntly. If your kid screams at you about his Xbox, he probably doesn't need an Xbox. Okay. If he screams at you that I will not get off my Xbox, it's time to get rid of the Xbox. If you tell me I can't intervene in my kid's technology life because he'll get too angry, technology is not a right. Technology is not a right. Now, there's two layers to this. One is the relationship part that we've already talked about, and two is the tech part. The relationship part is something that Ashley is doing a really good job. Ashley and Christy, all of them are doing a good job of creating the ability for you guys to connect with your kids. The tech piece is, I need you to know your child is not entitled to any single piece of technology. If the Xbox is what's always the source of trouble, it's time to get rid of the Xbox. If it's the phone, folks, it may be time to get rid of the phone. Okay, I realize that your kid may flip out about that, but again, you're the parent, and I promise you can do it. All right, with that in mind, I'm going to address some more of that later. I know that we could probably now pause for Q&A, and I could do some individual counseling sessions with some of you while probably listening to others of you tell me other things. But let's get into the stuff. So we got a few minutes to talk about tips. So I'm going to give you some kind of overarching ones, and then we're going to do some specific ones. Number one, your kid probably shouldn't have a smartphone until high school. My son does not. He has a phone that he can call and text me on. He does not have the ability to do anything else. He doesn't have the ability to surf the internet. He doesn't have the ability to download apps. There's a lot of phones now that do this. There are also a lot of products that do this. I would encourage you as parents to investigate those products and investigate those phones and decide what's best for your kid. Flip phones still exist. Now, generally, you have to order them. That's what we had to do. You had to order. I love flip phones, man. They are the best. You have to order them, but they're cheaper, and you can get them. Again, you can't walk into a store and walk out with one, but you can order them. If you are, well, let's keep going. I got some other things I want to do. Second thing, if there's a question that I get more often than any other after doing these presentations, it's how much screen time can my kid have? Now, I want to pause and I want to make fun of us as parents for just a second, because I asked the same question. Okay, we're all in the same boat. What's the maximum amount of time my kid can be on a device? Is one of my favorite questions, because I want you to pause for a second and I want you to realize what we're asking. This thing that I know is not good for them, like, what's the most of it they can do before I start permanently rotting their brain? Maybe let's not think about it in terms of what's the absolute max. Maybe let's think about it in other terms, but we'll talk about that in a minute. If you want a number, though, I will give you a number. If you want a number to shoot for in your home, less than 2 hours a day of recreational screen use is probably pretty good. This does include a TV. Recreational screen use is anytime a screen is on for their entertainment. Okay, so if you really want to shoot for a hard number, less than 2 hours is still probably too much for me, but at least it's a place to start. If that's too much, if you think to yourself, you see that slide and you think, okay, my kid can't do less than 2 hours. I want to remind you that resilience, which is what we're trying to create in kids, actually begins with you as a parent. Let me tell you what I mean. When parents tell me my kid couldn't handle getting off his Xbox, so I gave up and gave him an extra 2 hours of Xbox time. You know what you just told me? You told me my kid couldn't handle getting off an Xbox, and I couldn't handle my kid not handling getting off an Xbox. Okay, so resilience has to start with us, folks. If my kid, I have two sons. I have a 13-year-old and a 9-year-old. You know a rule we have, and I'm actually going to talk about this in a minute. A rule we have in our home is if you ever start fighting me on getting off your technology, I want you to know you're telling me you're getting too much of that technology. And if you tell me, Dad, I can't get off my Xbox, if you're fighting me, if you're yelling at me, if you're angry, if you're hostile, I'm not going to get into an argument with you. I'm not going to be baited into an argument. What I am going to say is, if you're fighting me over anything, you're telling me you can't handle it. Okay. If you can't handle your kid's meltdown, you're teaching your kid to just have bigger meltdowns. Okay. If you can't handle your kid's meltdowns, you're teaching your kid to have bigger meltdowns. If your kid can cry and continue to get his Xbox, or if your kid can threaten you and you refuse to take their phone, or your kid can behave in a way that is completely unacceptable, and you then give the thing that they're fighting you on, you're conditioning your kid that that's how they get things that they want. All right, so let's talk about now, how do we handle the screen time issue? I don't like saying 2 hours. I don't like it because it's too, I don't know your kid. Your kid maybe can handle a little bit more. Maybe your kid can handle a little bit less, but I don't like the 2 hour rule. So I do want to give what I personally prefer. I gave you the 2 hour rule because parents want something. So let me give you the what I think is a better approach. So you want to figure out how to manage screen time in your home. Here's how you're going to do it. You're going to use the following questions on this slide to help determine screen time in your home. Ready? First, you're going to measure your life in weeks as opposed to days. So you're not going to try to ask yourself, was every day a good day? Now, I am going to give you a metric for days. I've never done that before, but I'm going to give you a metric for days. But I want you to think about your week. You and your kids, I want you to think about your week. So you're going to ask yourself, what do you consider both a good and full week? What's a fulfilling week for you? I would love for you and your family to have that conversation tonight. I would love for you guys to sit down. It's Tuesday. There's a lot of week left. I would love for you to ask your family, hey, what does a good week look like? Like, I don't just mean fun. I mean, like, what's a good week look like? And as a parent, you're going to have to do some coaching and some teaching on this. Here's my answers. I'm going to let you cheat off of me. One, we've chosen to eat healthy more times than not. Yes, I've got cookies in the pantry, but I also will do the grilled chicken, whatever, but from time to time. We've played outside. Now, these are young kids. Mine are 13 and 9. Maybe for your 16 and 17-year-old, it won't be quite like this, although 16 and 17-year-old kids playing outside is still not over. We've gotten dirty enough to need a shower or to play myself exhausted. When kids are little, that's a really good metric for me. I want them to be out enough. Now, it's September or it's August in Texas. Your kid only has to be outside for about 45 seconds to need to come in and clean up after being outside. But you get the point. So they're outside playing enough to actually need to come in and clean up. Have you done something non-digital that requires imagination? A puzzle, a book, a painting, a nothing, a sitting in a room and thinking? Anybody done that lately? I did that this morning for the first time in a long time. It was really weird, but I really enjoyed it. Did we read on at least 3 separate days? When I say read, I don't mean scroll. I mean read. A Kindle is fine. I read on a Kindle, but read meaning long form. Not even books. And maybe you're not a book person. Are you reading long form articles like lengthy multi-page articles? That is such a better use of your time than headline scrolling and doom scrolling. Have you done some sort of a shared family activity. So maybe it's the kind of cheesy stereotypical model where we're playing board games together or something like that. But I love digital together games. There's a game that my kids have introduced me to. I hope that you and your kids will discover it. A game called Party Animals, which I had to look into before we played it because it sounded off to me. It is basically, if you've ever played the game Human Fall Flat, it's the same graphics generator. So it's this really funny graphics generator, but it's basically very G-rated wrestling matches with these really funny animated characters that I promise you, my children, 13 and 9, my oldest is in middle school. There is nothing they do in their life that they laugh more at than playing that game, and we do it all as a family. So there are games you can play with your kids to kind of invite yourself into some of their digital time. Okay, when it comes to decisions about screen time, so if you're trying to figure out, can my kid, I got work to do tonight. It's Thursday night. I got work to do. Can my kid binge a little on video games or on something else? Has it been a good week? Have you done like most of the stuff on your list? Do you feel like your kid has a balanced life? If it's been a good week, then honestly, you can probably chill out just a little bit. Maybe your kid can have a little extra video game time. School started on Tuesday of last week for my kid, or for both my kids. Sunday was a heavy. They binged. They played video games most of the day on Sunday. They've got a balanced life. They both play musical instruments. They both have hobbies that they engage in. They both play sports. They've got other things that they do. And as long as that's the case, and as long as they're creating and they're reading and they're doing the things that I want from them, I don't really get too worked up about a little bit of extra screen time. Okay, so that's the goal. Some of you, I did that slide a year ago, and the feedback I got was that it would be helpful to think about a day as well. So I did this. This is new for you this time. So what's a good day look like? If you are thinking to yourself, I need something a little more micro. Okay, did you do your homework? So that's question number one is your homework done? Number two, have you done something productive for the family? Have you done a chore? Have you helped out somewhere? Have you done something that benefits the family as a whole? Have you done one of the following? Have you read? Have you played a musical instrument? Have you written something? Have you made something? Have you done something that is not video game related? Have you had an actual conversation with an available member of your household? Meaning you said more than just fine when your parent asked how you were. Did you actually engage in dialogue? Did you go outside, or did you at least do something that was semi-active inside? Okay. If your kid says, can I play video games tonight? Ask a couple of these questions. Your answer is, I don't know. Have you had a good day? That's what a good day looks like. And it doesn't have to always look like this, but if your kid says, "Can I play video games? Can I do whatever the digital thing is that your kid likes doing?" If the question is, "How do I say yes or do I say no?" Ask yourself, has it been a good day? Has it been a good week? And if the answer is yes, then you can probably give them a little bit more flexibility. Now, that is not the case with certain technology, which we're going to talk about here in just a second. Some of these other things are pretty standard, so encourage more unsupervised outdoor play. Hey, parents, it's not up to you to make sure every minute of your kid's life is stimulated in some way. You don't have to constantly be putting something in front of them for them to do. Your kid saying, "I'm bored," does not need to scare you, and it does not need to mean that you now have to jump up and do something. "I'm bored," you know what it can mean? It can mean your kid's about to flex their creativity, which is a really, really good thing. All right, so here's some other things that you can do. You can monitor video game really closely for boys. All right, now here's why we do that. Video gaming with boys is creating I'm going to try not to sound too psychology nerd on you. It's creating a dopaminergic feedback loop that's mimicking an addictive behavior. In other words, our boys are becoming addicted to video games. Okay, now girls are by and large becoming addicted to Instagram, but boys, it's video games. And the reason for that is because we don't understand how dopamine interacts with the brain. At least the average person doesn't at this point. I think we're getting better at it, but we don't fully understand it yet. And so we keep putting kids on what is called a dopaminergic feedback loop. What that means is we're sending them into these highly dopamine inducing activities. Dopamine is the thing that is tied, it's the chemical in your brain, it's the neurotransmitter in your brain that is tied to every addiction we are aware of. Okay, so how do we distinguish between the good video games and the bad video games? I'm glad you asked. Here are some of the concerning things to look for. If your kid is playing a game with random interval rewards, so in other words, they engage, it's high intensity, rapid pacing, and they're constantly being rewarded with things. That's a game you want to limit. Okay, let me give you some examples of that. Call of Duty, Fortnite, all of those games where you rack up kills and you rack up like badges. All of the Assassin's Creed games, racing games to a degree, because they generally are tracking point totals and they're putting those point totals in competition with other point totals. All that model is an addiction machine. It's a slot machine. So your kids, Call of Duty is one that I'll focus on. Call of Duty may not necessarily be the one your kids are playing, but the model is one that's used all the time. And it's first-person shooter games where they get put into these worlds with other gamers and they join up as a team to battle against other teams. Now, I may get some pushback on this, but I'm a science guy. I'm not a only my belief and conviction guy. Scientifically, we've never been able to find a correlation between violent video games and actual violence. So I'm not quite as worked up about the nature of some of the games as you might expect. I am super worked up about the dopamine. And let me tell you why. Your kid in Call of Duty goes into a room and joins up with these other kids. There's a bunch of stuff that's going to happen. Number one, I would beg you, if your child is going to do that, do not allow a headset to be a part of that. I understand that a bunch of your kids do that, and they do that to talk to their friends. Now, if you know and trust the friends that they're playing with, if your kids know and trust the kids that they're talking to, I'll let you make that choice. I'm fine. I'm fine with my son talking digitally to only his friends who I have pre-approved, and I actually physically know them. They are neighbors. I know their parents. Okay, I have no problem with my kid talking online with those kids. Where I struggle is, by and large, when they go into those rooms, they're on headsets with anybody else in the entire world who entered into that room with them. Okay, that's a concern for me. You would not send your kid into the middle of Times Square to pick up an Xbox controller and play with whoever happened to walk up. Okay, you would be concerned about who your kid was being exposed to. So that's what the headset's going to do. But once the kid's in the room, they're going to go through these levels over and over and over and over and over. And every level is going to have a winner and then a silver medal and a bronze medal. And this team beat this team. And they're going to want to do it again as soon as it's over. All right. So that's really concerning to me. So here's what's not concerning to me. What's not concerning to me is controlled pacing. Okay. The limited ability to jump to other games, games that are a little quieter, games that are a little calmer. I gave you some examples of this. Open world gaming. So the Zelda games, Breath of the Wild in particular, some of the Assassin's Creed games, although the content is not at all appropriate for children, but some of those open world format games. Now, the leveling up system in those games can be a bit problematic, but the open world nature of those games is actually really enticing to me. Minecraft. My kids have figured out that they don't really have a time limit when it comes to Minecraft. They're building, they're creating. Now, there are some games and stuff that you can do inside of Minecraft, but it's not a highly dopaminergic activity. So if you're trying to figure out what's good and what's not, here's a phrase you can Google, or more than likely now you can chat GPT or you can Grok. Low dopamine games. Look that up. You can find generally some recommendations. We're going to do a presentation on AI. I don't remember what month that is, but we've got an AI presentation coming. I'm going to talk really intentionally about how to use it as a tool. A great tool for AI is being really specific about what you're looking for in gaming. Help me find low dopamine games for my 11-year-old that have a G to PG rating or an E rating, which is what the video game industry uses, that has an E rating that isn't highly violent. You'll get options. You'll have to look through them. AI is not perfect. In fact, it is really flawed. So you're going to have to look through them. But the idea is there are low dopamine games out there that exist. All right, couple more that I want to make sure that I've touched on because these came up in your questionnaire. Keep internet connected devices out of your kid's bedroom, period. I'm not just kind of a stickler on that. I am aggressive about this policy. I don't care whether we're talking about boys, girls, whatever. And so I will oftentimes have parents say to me, okay, but like at what age does that stop? And my answer is if you want the age that it should stop at, it's 70, maybe 75. At that point, you're probably fine. But prior to that, you probably don't need an internet connected device in your room. You know what's funny? And I'm only going to say this for two reasons. One, because I make fun of her for it to her face, and she knows that it's in good nature. And two, she's not on the call, so she's not going to hear it. My wife, who is awesome, and I love her dearly, will routinely tell me, like, I just got no sleep. And I want to tell her, you went to bed at like 9:30. Your face was glowing though, and doing this until about midnight. Like that's not a good way to end your night. So for you, recognize that the same rule that should apply to you applies to your kids, which is no internet connected device in rooms. Next, don't give a smartphone as your first phone. So for your kid, it would be really neat for them to get a flip phone first. Why? We want to really instill in them that a phone is about communicating with us and with people we love. I'm not going to give them an iPhone. Let's pause for a second and take a breath about where we are as a society. The phone in your pocket, the actual phone app is the most annoying thing on it. Everything else is what we spend our time doing. So for your kid, let the first phone not be a smartphone. Okay, like, kind of get them used to talking. Also, you know what I would love? What we did with ours, his first phone, not only was it not a smartphone, he couldn't text on it. You know what he had to do? He had to call people and talk to them like a human. It was crazy. All right, next, I'm going to encourage you to work smarter. I gave 2 examples of this. For the record, I don't get any promotion from this. I'm not trying to I don't have any endorsement deals. Although if you work for these companies and would like to pay me, I'm happy to do that. But there are 2 products that I put in front of you that I've seen and that I really like. One of them is called the K-Safe. One of them is called MindSight Timer. So essentially what it is, these are time lock devices that cannot be opened with a key or overridden. They were meant as kind of a willpower device. In fact, the kitchen safe, first time I saw it was on Shark Tank. It says that on the label. And it was the company was pitching it as a way to lock away your cookies so that you wouldn't snack at night, which was really smart. But my brain thought, dude, my phone's going in there. Put your phone in there we've got a couple of these in our home. Put your phone in there at dinner time. Put your phone in there at night. Set the timer. Put the Xbox controllers in a time lock safe and set the lock. And what you've done is you've eliminated the possibility that your kid can beg their way back to their Xbox. If the Xbox controllers and the power cord that goes to the Xbox are in a kitchen safe and it's time locked for 24 hours, it won't open until the next day, you can sing, dance. There's no rain dance you're going to do to open that lock. Okay. Now, in the event of an emergency, it can be opened. And I only say that because I recommended the K-Safe years ago in Mineral Wells. And I went back the next year and this very sweet lady said, my son got kind of mad at me and he put my car keys in there and set the timer for 4 days. So I learned you can open it with a sledgehammer, which was my favorite story I've ever been told by a parent. So if you have a kitchen safe, make sure you take care of your car keys if your kid gets mad at you. All right. Couple other things that I wanted to leave you with. I'm going to just put all these up here. Look, I read and I'm going to address it just as bluntly as I can. Folks, I read some of your questions. Like, we need practical tools without just telling us to go spend more time outside. A lot of times you're asking for, like, how do I lose a bunch of weight without changing my diet or my eating habits? Well, I don't know how to do that. And if you can do it, it's probably not going to be safe or sustainable. Folks, if you want to change the technology habits in your home, it's not going to be easy. You are going to have to do some of these other things. Now, I'll make it a little easier for you. If you will look at the slide in front of you, you have a bunch of questions and things that you can talk about with your kid. These are proactive conversations. Tell them what you see in front of you. You're not talking to a device. You're talking to a person. There's a person on the other end of that. Talk to them about the fact that the digital world is different from the real world. That is a real lesson that your kids have to be taught. I want you to proactively tell your kid how they should conduct themselves online. Look, can you promise they're always going to do it? No, but that's the case for all parenting. I can't ever promise that my kids are always going to make the right choice. All I can do is do the best I can to make sure that they definitely know the difference. Let me move forward to, there's some other questions. Let me move forward to two other things. If you don't know what to talk about, this is called Table Topics. To tell you how much I believe in this, my son's middle school had to deal with the same thing that all of your kids' schools had to deal with, which is the absence of devices on school grounds. You know what we did? I met with his administration over the summer, and our little company donated like 50 boxes of these table topics, and they put them in the cafeteria at lunch. And so what we saw, and I was curious to see if they're going to use them. Now, my kid's in a unique environment. He's in a middle school and a high school combined. And so he's got, across these grade levels, I've seen it with my own eyes, the kids are using them. They're actually talking to each other at lunch, and they're finding ones that are funny, and they're talking through them. Folks, the art of conversation is not being trained in the way that it once was. And so oftentimes, I saw it with my own kid. I remember him sitting in the back seat with a friend of his on the way home from football practice last year. And I remember thinking, why in the world is this kid not talking? And the answer is because they don't know how to do the basic interaction that you and I grew up having to do all the time. So stuff like Table Topics can really help with that. All right, here's the last thing. And the reason I saved it till the end is because it's A, really self-explanatory, and B, there's a link you can follow to get there. So we've been working for years at Paravita. We've been working for years at trying to give parents a tool that will try to do everything that I've been preaching for the last 50 minutes, which has actually been my sermon for now 15 years. Paravita, for the record, is my company that was built out of this. It was built out of this desire to help connect families in a truly like meaningful long-term way. And here's the thing. I don't have an app to do it. I have a series of questions and conversations for you and your family to have, because I can't help you grow as a family if you can't talk to each other. So here's what you can do. You can follow that QR code, and there's two things that you're going to find. You're going to find, number one, a blank, well-connected family blueprint. That's what it's called. And then you'll also find one that has examples. Here's what I'm asking you to do. Go through this conversation with your family, set some norms, set some rules, look at the examples page as a guide to help you establish an actual plan for how technology is going to look at your home. I'm going to move really quickly here. These are all just this is what's on the example slide. So go through that. Hopefully it'll be helpful for you. There was one thing, you know what, we're going to need to quit here, because I said I was going to leave time at the end for conversation. I didn't do that, but I will hang out. I will not take it personally if you need to leave, but I've got a little bit of time. So I am going to stop here. Before I do, oh, what happened?
I'm sorry.
Did I lose you?
Nope. Are you still there? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. For
there
those
we
of
are.
you who are hopping off, I just hopefully you should be able to take our survey. We have a little survey here. If you will complete it, we're going to do a drawing for a copy of The Anxious Generation and a copy of the formula, which is about unlocking the secrets to raising highly successful children. And so this first one was the one that Dr. Ryan Smith was referring to when he was talking earlier. So while you're asking questions, I wanted to have this up so they could see.
Okay, so Carrie, you had a question. You said, "What about listening to music in their room from a tablet?" Listen. My kid takes his phone. Now he has a phone that it's basically an iPod. I have no problem with him listening to music in his room. I have no problem with music being in their room. When I say no internet connected devices, I mean your kids should not have access to social media or to browsing the internet in their room by themselves. I would maybe your kid is responsible enough to not have that be a problem. If they are, they're alone in that because most of them do not have that ability. All right, I'm going to hang out for a minute. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. For the rest of you, thanks for hanging out with us. And I left some links. The website I was sending you to is our website. You can find me there if you have questions, or if I struck a nerve and you think, okay, I want to make some of those changes, but things have been a little bit, gotten a little bit out of control in our house. If you need some help and you don't want to do this in front of everybody, we'll take care of it. So reach out to me. What are my feelings on smart speakers in kids' rooms? I'm not as concerned about it, but the question for me is always why and what are they doing with it? If it's, yeah, I've heard this before. If like, well, that's the alarm they use in the morning. Yeah, okay. We went to Walmart and bought an alarm. I would prefer things that aren't smart for stuff like that. But if you're keeping an eye on it and if you're not concerned about what you're seeing, and if you're not concerned about the amount of time that your kid is spending with it or what your kid is doing with it, I don't know that a smart speaker in a kid's room has to necessarily be an issue.
There is a question. It says, how about using educational apps like language learning apps or school subject learning apps?
So I wanted to touch on ed tech. How many people do we still have? 60 something. Okay, so let me touch on ed tech for a second. Allen ISD has never in our time together told me what to say, and they've never censored or filtered anything I've ever said. And so I'm not telling you what I'm about to tell you because out of respect for them. But I know because I've worked with Allen for a long time, and I know it's true about a lot of other surrounding districts as well. Allen works really hard to thread the needle. Allen ISD is aware of the same problems that we just talked about. They know that kids don't need as much digital time as they've been given. There was about a 10-year window where I admit I worked in ed tech. I was a technology facilitator for Mesquite ISD. So I worked in the classroom in technology. There was a window of time for about 5 to 7 years where we went nuts. Everything was digital and we're going to put them all online. We gave them all devices and we thought it was such a success when we walked in, and it was silent because they were all dug into a computer. We have since learned that that's not ideal. So Allen ISD does a lot of research. It spends a lot of time trying to make sure that the assignments your kids are getting that have to use the internet, that they are healthy in so much as they can be healthy. So trust that ed tech has been well vetted in schools. Now, for the educational apps, if your kid learns better with an app, do it and embrace it. So I am going to say something that I think might surprise you. It surprised me. My father is a classically trained pianist who played with the Orlando Symphony. Okay, he is a phenomenally gifted musician. He tried to teach my 13-year-old son how to play the piano. My 13-year-old is also an amazing pianist. He did not learn from my dad. You know how he learned? He learned from Simply Piano, which is an app that he put on his iPad, that he put on the thing, and it's the gamification of music education. And he played it about 30 minutes a day for a couple of years, and he is amazing at his piano playing now. I don't know how he does what he does other than he learned on an app. So I'm telling you, the educational stuff, there is amazing progress being made in education. The gamification of language acquisition, the gamification of music knowledge. I'm good with that. What is it? Storyboard. Oh, some of you elementary people might have to remind me. My youngest built a book on a story website, and then for like $3 they published it and sent it to him, so he is a published author in his mind. So yes, there's awesome technology out there. My feelings about educational technology are, it's great if you can rope your kids into learning that way early. It can be really, really phenomenal. Okay, do I do this talks in elementary schools? All the time. I would love if you can talk to children in their schools, since kids tend to do better than another professional adult. Okay, so talking to kids. Let's talk about that for a second. I've done that to mixed results, and I'll tell you why. Guidance counselors on those campuses always know how to talk to the kids on their campus better than anybody from the outside. Now, I am happy to come in and help guidance counselors facilitate this conversation, to be part of the talk, but I, more than you can imagine, respect the amount of energy that guidance counselors invest in learning the atmosphere and the rhythms of their campus. So while I very much appreciate the compliment, I promise you the guidance counselors on campus are the ones who are most well equipped to communicate this message to them. If you think this would be a good message for your guidance counselors, I'm sure they have shoot them an email. Hey, it'd be awesome if we did something on technology. They might already be planning something. But either way, yes, I agree. This conversation needs to happen. On high school campuses, a little trick I learned? I don't keynote this presentation on high school campuses nearly as much anymore. You know who does? My mid-20s employees. My Gen Z employees are the ones who actually, some of you might have met them. They've attended most of our presentations. In fact, Miranda might even be on this call right now. My mid-20s employees, when we go into schools, I prefer, they're Gen Z. They know more. They make fun of me all the time for my old man stuff. So I tend to let them, when we're talking in schools, I'm going to let them be the ones who communicate that. Miranda hasn't had a chance to do that yet, but she will. Anything else?
I don't see any other questions.
Okay. All right. So with this last second or two, there's 60 of you who have hung on. I do understand. I tend to be a little more blunt and direct. But folks, I promise we're not overwhelmed by this. These tech problems that we're all up against, these are not new problems. They're all the same problems you had when you were in high school. It's relationships, it's bullying, it's getting too deeply invested in something. It's all the same problems that you're familiar with. Don't be freaked out by the technology. We're gonna be okay. AI is an amazing tool if you know what you're talking about. If you don't know what you're talking about, it might be the worst thing that we've ever inflicted on humanity. And we're going to talk about that in. Do we know when our AI thing is? Do we have a date on that? I know we did.
Hang on. Let me tell you. Well, I say hang on. Let me tell you. Keep talking.
I want to say it's December. Is it December?
It is October 28th.
October. So October 28th. So parents, on October 28th, I was going to put AI in this presentation, but it was way too much stuff. So we're having an entire hour dedicated to AI. We're going to talk about how amazing it is while talking about how terrifying it is. So the goal is to try to thread the needle and help you understand that A, it's not going away, B, it's just going to become more ubiquitous, and C, there's some things we need to do to make sure that it doesn't lead your family in a crazy direction, but that instead it actually enhances what you're doing in the home. So I don't know if I'll see you, I think in September before then. But definitely mark your calendar for that one.
Yes.
All right. Ashley, I'll hand it
All
back to you.
right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us.